On today's video, I'm going to give you an honest insight into 3 times that I almost quit my business with EXP. Hello guys and girls, and welcome to another video. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and for being here. If this is your first time or if you've been here before and you've not already, please take a minute to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and please let me update you every time we release a new video, which hopefully will help you start and scale your agency to have more money, impact and freedom from property. Now, that's enough of the formalities and the long-winded introduction. I want to share today's story, which is about 3 separate times that I almost completely gave up on running my business with EXP. I want to share the reasons, I want to share the justifications, and ultimately share how I came through those trials, tribulations, and setbacks. Now, the first time I almost gave up on EXP was in the early stages. I'd probably say maybe 3 to 4 months into growing my business. And the main reason why I almost gave up at that point was because I was a little bit disheartened at the amount of time it was taking for me to build the foundations. I felt as though I was a very slow starter. I'd had some success, I'd listed some properties, we'd done some great videos that even in my humble opinion were a good reflection of the home. And all those things were big ticks in the box. But I'd not yet cash flowed properly. I wasn't getting paid with any kind of fluidity. My listing numbers weren't through the roof, and I was well aware that some of my colleagues, some of my business partners in different areas were much further ahead of the curve than I was in terms of listing numbers, in terms of pipelines, and in terms of payouts. And because I was almost comparing myself against them, that made me feel like a failure in comparison, which is not a fun place to be. And I kind of came to this point where I thought, well, I'm still fairly early stage in business, so if I decide to quit now, if I throw in the towel, if I call it a day, and if I move on to something else, it's almost like I can not take responsibility of not being good enough. I can say, oh yeah, that EXP thing, it wasn't for me. I tried it, but it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I felt as though I had an easy justification and almost like a get out where I could void myself of any responsibility or ownership that I wasn't quite as good or I didn't get quite off to the start that I thought I was going to. So for me, quitting at that early stage felt like the easy option. And as humans, sometimes we can find ourselves being attracted to the easy route rather than doing the hard yards, which ultimately lead us to where we need to be. So that was the first time I almost quit. And of course, I'm glad at this point that I didn't. The second time I almost quit was when I was building up my average fees. So when I first started, I was dealing with lower end stock. My average fee was in and around £1,500. And I remember I closed my first high ticket deal, or at least what I considered at that stage to be a high ticket fee, which was in and around £6,000. So, you know, considerably more than my average fee at that point. I sold this property, we did a great production, the client was over the moon, it was all high fives and arse slapping on the way to completion. And ultimately the sale disintegrated. It fell through, the seller decided they weren't going to move, it came off the market, and as a result I never got paid on that deal. But I was so excited about that, getting that commission through, that I'd almost spent the money already in my own mind. I was counting the days until completion, and the progression up until that point had been fairly smooth sailing. So once that fell out of bed, that represented a significant chunk of my pipeline at that particular stage. And that was a real kick in the teeth. And that was something that in that moment, I felt as though I wasn't going to bounce back from. It just felt like too big of a blow. And I thought, now I've lost that big chunk of my pipeline, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to build that again? I've got no other properties that are on a similar kind of fee. I'm going to have to sell 3, 4, 5 properties to equal that kind of commission. And it felt very disheartening in the moment. But ultimately, you've got 2 choices. You quit, you admit defeat, and you walk away. Or you just simply hustle on, you work harder, you get your head down, you continue prospecting, you overcome it and you build from it. And that's exactly what I did. The third time I almost quit was when I was pretty much flat out of cash. I met up with an old friend from school. This is a guy he's called Jack. He was one of my best mates growing up. He's super successful in his field. He's actually a doctor, he's a GP, and he obviously makes okay money from doing that, although he does work very hard for that cash. We've not met up for some years, but he's one of those friends where they can step out of your life. You don't have to speak and exchange messages and speak on the phone every single day. But when you catch up over a coffee, it's like you've never been apart. We've got that kind of relationship. So he was kind enough to come up to where I live. We went out for a Costa coffee. I remember the day well. It was great. It was overcast. It was a bit dreary. I was feeling pretty down on my luck at that point because I was absolutely flat broke. We met up for a coffee and I was over the moon when he said, "Don't worry, mate, I'll get this round." I thought, thank goodness you're getting this round, because if I had to pay for it, I don't think my card would stretch. Anyway, we got the coffees, we got talking, he was telling me about his line of work and what he's been involved with and where he's living and where his life's up to. And the inevitable question came round of, "Oh, Ben, I can see that you've set up your own agency. How's that going?" And I told him straight, I said, "Jack, you know, it's going well, I'm enjoying it overall, it's great to have the freedom. I'm loving this EXP thing, but I'm struggling, mate. I don't know if I'm going to come through this. I've got no cash, I've got no reserves, got no resources, I've not got a wealthy family behind me, I've not got an unlimited pot of cash, and I just couldn't see that I was going to be able to make a breakthrough and continue to cash flow the business like I needed to in order to come out the other side at that particular time." I didn't ask and I genuinely wasn't hinting, but he said, "Look, mate, let me lend you some cash." I said, no, it's fine. But he absolutely insisted that he was going to lend me some cash for a period of time. He said, "There's no expectation, and when I get this back, you don't have to rush, don't even think about it again. I don't expect any interest or anything like that. I just know that you're going to make this a success." He looked me in the eye and said, "I know who you are as a person, I know what you're capable of, I've seen the content that you've produced. There is not a single doubt in my mind that this is going to work out for you. And when it does, and when you can afford it, when you can comfortably afford it, at that point, you can pay me back the cash." And it kind of almost brought a tear to my eye. In fact, even telling the story now, I kind of put myself back in that coffee shop, and it makes me well up a little bit, because when someone's got that level of confidence in you, where they're willing to put their hand in the pocket, put the money where their mouth is, and back you, that meant so much. And I think that's the first time that had ever happened. So obviously I took that, and I'm glad that I did, because the next couple of months were quite rough, and in hindsight I don't think I could have made it without his financial contribution. But all the same, you know, that saw me through until the point when my pipeline started to progress, the business started to grow, and thankfully sometime later I was in a position where I was able to pay Jack back. Now all three of those stories, when I considered quitting, when I put the towel in, when I thought I can do no more, the one common thing they've all got is that I was at a low point in my mindset. I lost a bit of confidence. I didn't have a spring in my step. I didn't have a great energy. And I can say with some confidence that in that moment, if I was called out for evaluation there and then, in the mindset and in the mood that I was in and with the energy that I was radiating, I'm not sure that vendors would have had confidence in me either, because I was on this downward spiral. But when you pick yourself up, when you come through the dark times, when you overcome those obstacles, and when you start to build on from that, you look back with hindsight and realize that it was just a temporary blip in time where you was feeling that way, and there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And now fast forwarding on kind of 2 years plus at the time of recording this video today, I'm so glad that I stuck with it and I hustled through and I got my head down, because what lay ahead was far bigger and grander than I ever could have imagined in that moment. So I think that whenever you're in that dilemma where you're at a crossroads, follow your gut, follow your head, follow your heart, but ultimately do what's right for you, and recognize that as long as you put the hard work in, as long as you stay focused and stay committed, you'll win. So guys, I hope that was of some use and insight. As always, if you're enjoying these videos, don't forget to comment, like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next clip.